This is a good book. I wish it didn't take me so long to read it. I'm a slow reader. I always take a long time to do stuff. I wonder if other people notice this. They must think I'm an idiot. I am an idiot.
Are you a worst case scenario thinker? Does your mind jump to the worst possible outcome when you're faced with a difficult situation or choice in your life? If so, we call this catastrophizing. Catastrophizing means you basically make mountains out of molehills. You consistently jump to the worst case scenario, even though you don't have evidence that that scenario is ever going to happen. So the question you might have is, why do we do this? And how do we stop it? That's where I come in. I'm Dr. Leif Smith, and I'm a clinical psychologist, and I'm on a mission to help people live happier, healthier lives as they beat back stress. So let me start by talking about a situation that's probably happened to you. I know it's happened to me before. The situation is you receive the dreaded text or the dreaded email that says, "Hey, do you have time to talk?"
I got a really bad feeling about this.
What happens in your mind when you get that email or that text? Because I know what happens in mine. In mine, I like to jump, or I should say my mind likes to jump to the worst possible case scenario. So if it's from my wife, I assume she's divorcing me. She's taking the kids, divorcing me, taking all my money. I'm going to be homeless under a bridge somewhere while she's laughing and living it up.
What a nut punch.
That's what my mind does in a span of 5 seconds. If it's from someone else, I assume the worst. Or my mind likes to jump there and assume the worst. So it's going to be a conversation that I don't want to have. It's going to be about something I don't want to talk about. It's going to be the worst possible scenario. I'm going to lose some business. I'm going to lose clients. I'm going to lose my job, whatever. If you're like me, your mind loves to do this.
So stupid as a stupid noise.
Now, you may ask, why is catastrophizing such a bad thing? Doesn't it, after all, doesn't it help you plan for the worst case scenarios? Well, my answer to that is no. Catastrophizing is jumping to the worst case scenario and preparing for the worst case scenario and worrying about the consequences of the worst case scenario, even when they don't happen. And so the problem with this is that your body is going to pay the price for that worrying and catastrophizing. The consequences here are real. Increased mental anguish, increased respiration, usually shallow breathing, which is associated with higher anxiety levels, increased heart rate, increased stress hormone release in the body, adrenaline, cortisol, and over the long haul, decreased immune functioning. These are some serious consequences, especially when that feared situation never even occurs. Now that I have your attention, maybe you'll get something out of this next section where I'm actually going to discuss some things you can do about your catastrophizing habit.
Like a lot.
So, I'm going to offer some tips. These are just tips that have worked in my own life. I'm going to give you 3 of these tips, and I hope they're helpful to you. Tip number 1 is I try to recognize the situations where I catastrophize the most. When I can increase my situational awareness of things that trigger my own habit of catastrophizing, like certain people, certain topics. I know topics like money. Yeah, that's a big trigger for me. Relationships, that's a big trigger for me. Parenting is a huge trigger for me. So you might have similar topics that trigger you. Maybe it's times of day. I know late at night when I'm tired, that tends to be when it's hardest to fight off this catastrophizing thinking. But if I can do this, if I can plan, I can come up with a plan for these situations and these triggers for catastrophizing. If I have a plan, then I can have a better outcome next time I notice it happening. Okay, tip number 2. When I do catch myself catastrophizing, I always try to ask myself, where is the evidence that the worst case scenario is going to happen?
Napoleon, like anyone can even know that.
Almost every time, I can't come up with solid, actual evidence. You know, the kind that holds up in a court of law. For example, when we go back to the "we need to talk" example, Where is the evidence that my wife is about to break up with me and leave me and take all my money and take my kids so that I'm going to be living under a bridge somewhere like a troll? Where is my evidence? Is it because I think that's going to happen right now? Because I'm feeling a certain way? That's not evidence. If I took that into a court of law, I would get laughed out of that court. That is not permissible as evidence. Now, if I had some evidence, if my wife, for instance, was taking all the money out of our bank accounts, that would be evidence of something dramatic happening. But I don't. In absence of evidence, there is no good reason to worry. It means we're not in reality. We're in our head. Tip number 3. Here's what I do. I resolve to be patient with myself and let things play out as they may. Maybe the end of the world won't come after all. I like to look at these situations as little experiments, and I'm a little scientist collecting data. Well, I guess I'm not a little scientist, but I'm a scientist, right? I just want to see what happens. I want to let it play out, and then I'm going to choose to decide what I want to do from there. This kind of follows with previous tip number 2 with looking for evidence. I'm looking for data. I have a hypothesis. Maybe, in my example, maybe my wife is going to leave me and take all my money and take my kids and force me to live under a bridge somewhere. Maybe so. And if that's the case, now, I don't have any evidence, but if that is the case, I'm going to let it play out and see what is going to happen. Moment by moment. Let me see if she takes all the money out of my bank account right now. Well, you wait it out. She's not doing that. Interesting. Okay, so maybe the worst case scenario is not happening. Or maybe she sends a follow-up text that says, we need to talk about what we're going to be doing Friday night because I don't know which restaurant we want to go to have our date night. Yeah, so if I let it play out a little bit, I'm going to get some evidence, right? Back to number 2, tip number 2. Be patient and play the experiment out and wait for the data. That always works with me when I'm not sure if I need to catastrophize. Okay, in conclusion, if you're anything like me, you catastrophize way too often, and the consequences are not insubstantial. They are very serious. It's a bad habit, plain and simple, and it causes me to stress out unnecessarily. I'm sure you can relate. Maybe these tips were helpful for you, and if so, let me know in the comments. Every single comment you make on here helps someone else who might be watching this video, who might be seeing my videos for the first time. So please, I welcome your opinions. Let me know which tip is the most helpful for you.